I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. My keys still clutched in my fist like a weapon. "I need air, Mark. Don't you dare follow me," I shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Then I drove around the block, killed the engine in the shadowed corner of our cul-de-sac, and slipped back through the garage door I'd left unlocked. Heart hammering, I crept into the guest room, switched on the old baby monitor we kept for Emma's anxious nights, and waited in the dark. Seconds later, his voice crackled through the speaker. Calm, intimate, devastating. "Rachel. Yeah, she's gone." Finally, I can't keep pretending anymore. Those words froze me where I stood the man I'd built my life with, casually dismantling it. That afternoon had started like so many others in our comfortable suburban routine outside Chicago. The October sun filtered through the kitchen windows, catching dust motes in the air as I flipped pancakes on the griddle. The house smelled of maple syrup and fresh coffee, the kind of domestic scent that once made me feel anchored. At 42, I still caught myself measuring my worth by these small rituals: packing Emma's lunch, keeping the fridge stocked, making sure Mark's work shirts were pressed. But lately, the rituals felt like chains. Mark sat at the island in his weekend hoodie, scrolling through his phone with that distant frown he wore more often these days. "Smells great," he murmured without looking up the same absent compliment he'd offered for years. Emma, 16 and armored in oversized headphones and skepticism, shuffled in, grabbed an apple instead of sitting down, and mumbled something about practice before vanishing upstairs again. The silence that followed pressed against my chest. I set a plate in front of him anyway. "We should talk about the reunion next weekend. It might be good for us to get out." He nodded, chewing mechanically. "Sure. Rachel texted the other day. She's helping organize. Should be fun catching up with everyone." The name landed like a pebble in still water. Rachel, his college girlfriend, the one who got away before I entered the picture. I kept my tone light, slicing strawberries with steady hands. "That's nice. She's doing well then. Marketing consultant now. Tough divorce, but she's bouncing back." He shrugged, eyes already drifting back to his screen. The ease in his voice unsettled me more than any outright lie could have. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, studying the faint lines around his eyes, the slight slump in his shoulders that spoke of a man carrying unspoken weight. 18 years of marriage, a daughter we both adored, a mortgage we'd finally tamed. Yet I felt the growing distance like a draft under a closed door. Later that evening, after Emma had retreated to her room with her laptop, we settled on the couch. The television flickered with some forgettable drama, its blue light casting shadows across Mark's face. His arm rested around my shoulders, warm but automatic, like muscle memory rather than choice. I shifted closer, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave mixed with the faint trace of the office. "Mark, are we okay? Really okay? It feels like we're just going through the motions lately." He squeezed my shoulder, eyes still on the screen. "We're fine, Sarah. Life's busy with Emma's applications and my projects. The reunion will shake things up. Remember how we met at that mixer? Good times." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to his steady breathing, my mind wandered to the little things. The longer hours, the quick glances at his phone, the way laughter came easier when he mentioned old friends. Lisa, my closest confidant since our kids were in preschool together, had warned me over coffee earlier that week. "Don't ignore the quiet cracks, Sarah." They widened fast. I'd laughed it off then, stirring sugar into my latte. The cafe's warm chatter a buffer against her words. Now in the dark they echoed. The days blurred into a familiar rhythm. Mornings meant rushing Emma out the door with a hug that lingered a second too long on my part. Afternoons were filled with substitute teaching gigs at the local high school, where I watched other families navigate the same tightrope of work and home. Evenings brought Mark home later, and later always with a plausible story about team deadlines or client calls. I filled the gaps with grocery runs, laundry folded into neat stacks, and quiet moments on the back porch, watching the leaves turn fiery orange and red. The air carried that crisp Midwestern bite, promising winter, and I pulled my cardigan tighter, wondering when our home had started feeling more like a well-run operation than a shared life. One crisp afternoon, while raking leaves in the yard, I caught Mark on the phone through the cracked window. His laugh was light, boyish almost. Yeah, I remember that night too. Crazy how time flies. He hung up quickly when he saw me slipping the phone into his pocket with a practiced smile. "Work stuff," he said, grabbing the rake from my hands. "Let me help with that." His hands brushed mine, calloused and familiar, yet the touch felt rehearsed. I nodded, forcing a return smile, but inside something tightened, a quiet suspicion I wasn't ready to name. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, I lay awake again, the baby monitor's green light glowing softly on the nightstand like a silent witness. We still kept it charged for those rare nights when Emma's anxiety flared. Little did I know how soon I'd need it for something far more shattering. By the time the reunion weekend approached, the cracks had spread. Mark seemed energized, humming in the shower, choosing his shirt with unusual care. I told myself it was harmless nostalgia. But as I zipped up my deep green dress, the one that still fit after all these years, and caught my reflection, the woman staring back looked tired but determined. I deserved more than motions. We all did. The reunion ballroom buzzed with forced laughter and clinking glasses, the air thick with perfume cologne and the faint scent of catered chicken. String lights twinkled overhead like forgotten stars, casting a warm glow over clusters of middle-aged professionals, trading stories of promotions and college-bound kids. I stood beside Mark in my green dress, a glass of white wine cool in my hand, smiling until my cheeks HD. He looked sharper than he had in months, his button-D down crisp and his posture straighter. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old spark the man I'd fallen for at that college mixer all those years ago. Then Rachel walked in. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, her dark hair falling in loose waves, a tailored blazer hugging her figure. At 44, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had rebuilt after loss. When her eyes landed on Mark, her face lit up in a way that sent a sharp twist through my stomach. "Mark Thompson," she called, her voice cutting through the noise like a familiar melody. "You haven't aged a day." They hugged right there in front of me, the kind of embrace that lingered just a beat too long. Her hand rested on his arm as she pulled back, laughing at some shared memory. I extended my hand politely. "Sarah, nice to finally meet you properly." "Sarah, of course," Rachel replied, her grip firm and warm. "Mark's mentioned you over the years. You two always seem so solid. It's inspiring, really." Her words were kind, but her eyes held something deeper. Nostalgia mixed with quiet curiosity. Mark chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, we've had our ride, 18 years and counting." The rest of the evening unfolded in a haze of small talk. I mingled with other spouses discussing school districts and the rising cost of everything while Mark and Rachel drifted toward the bar with a group of old friends. I watched from across the room as they leaned in, close heads, tilted in conversation. His laugh carried over the music, genuine, unguarded. It had been months since I'd heard that sound directed at me. The wine turned sour on my tongue. On the drive home through quiet suburban streets lined with glowing porch lights, Mark tapped the steering wheel lightly to the radio. "It was good seeing everyone," he said, glancing my way. "Rachel's doing consulting work now. Tough time with the divorce, but she's handling it like a pro." I kept my gaze on the passing houses. "She seems strong. You two caught up a lot." He shrugged eyes on the road. "Old friends, you know. It's nice to remember when things felt simpler. Simpler." The word hung between us like exhaust fumes. Back home. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Emma was staying at a friend's, giving us the rare empty nest evening. I expected Mark to head straight to bed, but instead he pulled me close in the hallway, his kiss urgent, in a way that felt borrowed. I responded, fingers tracing the familiar lines of his back, but my mind replayed Rachel's hand on his arm, the easy rhythm of their laughter. That night, Sleep evaded me. I lay beside him, listening to the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the faint creak of the house settling around us. The baby monitor sat on the dresser, its green light steady. We'd bought it when Emma was colicky as a newborn. Those long nights of rocking and whispering promises that we'd figure it all out. Now it felt like a relic from a different chapter. The following weeks blurred into a careful dance. Mark's work dinners stretched later. Texts buzzed on his phone during family dinners, which he silenced quickly with a casual client in a different time zone. One evening, while I chopped vegetables for stir-fry, the sharp scent of ginger and garlic filling the kitchen, he stepped outside to take a call. Through the window, I saw his face soft in the corners of his mouth, lifting in that private smile I once thought was reserved for me. Emma noticed the shift, too. Over breakfast, one rainy morning, toast crumbs scattered across the table. She pushed her cereal around the bowl. Dad's been weird lately, always on his phone. You guys fighting or something? I forced a reassuring smile, pouring her orange juice. Just work stress, honey. Nothing for you to worry about. How's that history project coming? She rolled her eyes but let it drop, grabbing her backpack as the school bus horn sounded outside. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with the dripping faucet and my circling thoughts. I wiped the counter harder than necessary, the cloth squeaking against granite. Lisa met me for our usual coffee run at the corner cafe where the barista knew our orders by heart. Steam rose from my latte as I stirred in sugar, the spoon clinking against ceramic. I'm probably overthinking it, I told her, voice low amid the chatter of other patrons. But the way he lights up talking about the reunion, it's like he's somewhere else even when he's home. Lisa leaned forward, her expression serious but kind. Trust your gut, Sarah. Little inconsistencies add up. Have you tried talking to him directly? I had, sort of. That same evening, after Mark returned from another late meeting, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, a light floral note that clung to his collar, I poured us each a glass of Cabernet. The rich, dark liquid swirled in the glasses under the pendant lights. You've seemed happier lately, I said carefully, handing him his drink. The reunion really energized you. He took a sip, eyes meeting mine over the rim. It was nostalgic. Reminds me of possibilities, before everything got so routine. Routine? The word stung, but I nodded, clinking my glass against his. We could shake things up. A weekend away, just us. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Sounds good. Let me check the calendar. Days later, I found myself at the park where we used to push Emma on the swings, the chains creaking and the breeze fallen leaves crunching under my boots. The air smelled of damp earth and distant woodsome smoke. I sat on a bench watching other parents chase toddlers and felt the weight of unspoken fears settle heavier. Mark wasn't cruel. He was simply absent in the ways that mattered most. And Rachel, with her freedom and shared history, seemed to fill the space I no longer occupied. One afternoon, while Mark showered upstairs, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen before I could stop myself. A message preview can't stop thinking about our talk last night. When can I see you again? No name, but I knew. My pulse roared in my ears as I set the phone down exactly as I'd found it, the cool marble counter grounding me. That evening, I cooked his favorite roast chicken, the savory aroma filling the house like a promise. We ate at the dining table with Emma, conversation flowing around school and weekend plans. Mark reached across to squeeze my hand, his touch warm and familiar. For a moment, the suspicion receded, but later, alone in the guest room folding laundry, the faint floral scent lingering on one of his shirts confirmed what my heart already suspected. The cracks were widening, and I was running out of ways to paper over them. The suspicion settled over our home like a persistent fog, thickening the air between us, even on sunny mornings when the kitchen filled with the rich aroma of brewing coffee and toasted bagels. Mark moved through our routines with a new energy that no longer included me. His laughter came easier during phone calls he took in the garage, his step lighter when he headed out for what he called quick client check-ins. I smiled through it all, chopping onions for dinner until my eyes stung, asking about his day, while the knife thudded rhythmically against the cutting board. Inside my chest felt tight, a constant low hum of unease that followed me from room to room. Emma picked up on the tension fastest. One drizzly afternoon as rain pattered against the windows, and I folded her laundry in her room stacks of hoodies, smelling of her strawberry shampoo. She looked up from her homework. "Mom, you okay? You've been quiet and Dad's barely here even when he's here." I smoothed a sweater with careful hands, the soft fabric warm from the dryer. "We're just busy, sweetheart. Work and school stuff. Nothing you need to carry." She studied me a moment longer, then nodded, but the doubt lingered in her eyes like the rain on the glass. I hated lying to her, but dragging her into my unraveling fears felt worse. Lisa became my anchor. We met at the cafe again, where the barista slid my usual latte across the counter with a sympathetic smile. The steam carried notes of vanilla as I wrapped my hands around the mug for warmth. "It's the little things," I told her, voice barely above the murmur of other conversations. Deleted texts, that perfume on his collar. He lights up talking about her, but with me, it's all logistics. She reached across the table, her grip steady. "You deserve clarity, Sarah, not this half-life. Have you thought about what you'll do if it's true?" The question followed me home through leaf-strewn streets where porch lights flickered on against the early dusk. I cooked salmon that evening, the fish sizzling in the pan, filling the kitchen with buttery herbed scent. Mark arrived late again, loosening his tie as he kissed my cheek. "Smells amazing. Rough day at the office, endless meetings." I served the plates, the ceramic warm under my fingers. "We should plan that weekend away soon, just us." He nodded, fork scraping against the plate. "Definitely. Calendar's crazy right now, but soon." His eyes flicked to his phone when it buzzed, a quick smile tugging at his lips before he silenced it. The gesture was small, but it landed like a stone in my stomach. Nights became my battlefield. I'd lie awake listening to the house settle the creak of floorboards, the distant hum of the furnace while Mark slept soundly beside me. One particularly restless evening after he'd come home smelling faintly of wine and that same light floral note, I slipped out of bed. The baby monitor sat on the dresser, its green light a quiet sentinel. I carried the receiver downstairs, plugged it in near the living room, and tested the range. The faint static reminded me of late nights years ago, straining to hear Emma's soft breaths. Now it served a different purpose. The next morning, while Mark shaved in the bathroom, steam fogging the mirror and the razor scraping against his jaw, I glanced at his phone, charging on the nightstand. A notification preview flashed. "Missed you already. Can we meet this week?" No name needed. My hands trembled as I set the phone back down exactly as I'd found it, the screen cool against my fingertips. I threw myself into the familiar to steady myself. Mornings meant packing Emma's lunch with precise care. Apple slices, turkey sandwich, a note scribbled on the napkin. Afternoons brought substitute teaching, where the chatter of high schoolers and the scratch of chalk on boards offered temporary distraction. Evenings I volunteered at the school fundraiser, arranging tables under harsh gymnasium lights that buzzed overhead, the scent of popcorn and coffee thick in the air. Mark praised the effort when I got home, but his compliments felt scripted. One crisp Saturday, we took Emma to the park as a family. Leaves crunched under our shoes as we walked the path, the air sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Emma raced ahead to the swings, her laughter carrying back to us. Mark pushed her gently, his hand steady on the chains. For a few precious minutes, it felt like before sunlight warming my face, his arm brushing mine. But when his phone vibrated in his pocket, he checked it quickly, that private smile returning. The moment fractured. Back home, while Emma showered upstairs, I confronted him in the kitchen. The countertop was cool beneath my palms as I leaned against it. "You've been distant, Mark. Not just busy somewhere else. Talk to me." He set his water glass down the ice, clinking. It's work, Sarah. Pressure's high. I'm handling it. His tone was even, but his eyes avoided mine, focusing instead on the fridge magnets we'd collected over years of family trips. I didn't push harder that night. Instead, I retreated to the guest room after dinner, the soft lamplight pooling on the carpet. The baby monitor receiver sat beside me, silent for now. I needed proof, not accusations that could shatter what remained. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, every creak and sigh amplified in the quiet. Days bled into one another. I caught fragments him stepping outside for calls, the way he lingered in the shower, longer humming tunes I didn't recognize. Emma withdrew more, burying herself in books and earbuds, the faint beat of music leaking from her room like a barrier. I wanted to protect her from this growing storm, but the thunder was already rumbling overhead. One evening, as rain lashed the windows and thunder rolled in the distance, Mark announced another late work commitment. Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up. He kissed my forehead lips, brushing skin that suddenly felt foreign. The door clicked shut behind him, and the house fell into heavy silence, broken only by the storm. I sat in the darkened living room, the baby monitor receiver in my lap. Its weight was reassuring a tool in my unraveling reality. The rain drummed steadily against the roof, mirroring the anxious beat in my chest. Whatever came next, I would face it, not as the woman who papered over cracks, but as someone ready to see the truth, however painful. The storm had passed by Friday evening, leaving the air fresh and heavy with the scent of wet earth and fallen leaves. Emma was safely at a sleepover, her laughter still echoing in my mind from our goodbye hug. The house felt unnaturally still as I moved through the kitchen, wiping counters that were already clean, the cloth sliding smoothly over cool granite. Mark arrived home earlier than usual, loosening his tie with a tired sigh that carried the faint trace of office coffee, and something sharper anticipation, perhaps. Dinner was simple grilled chicken, roasted vegetables crisp at the edges, the savory aroma filling the space between us. We ate mostly in silence, forks scraping plates until I set my glass down with a deliberate clink. I've been feeling invisible lately, Mark, like we're roommates sharing a schedule instead of partners. Talk to me, please. He looked up, eyes guarded. Sarah, not tonight. It's been a long week. I'm handling a lot right now. The dismissal stung sharp as the knife I'd used earlier. I stood chair scraping back against the tile. Handling what exactly? Because it doesn't feel like us anymore. My voice rose, controlled but edged. If you won't talk, maybe I need some air. Don't follow me. I grabbed my coat, slammed the front door hard enough for the sound to reverberate through the house, then circled the block in my car before slipping back through the unlocked garage door. My heart pounded against my ribs as I crept upstairs to the guest room, leaving the door ajar. The baby monitor transmitter sat innocently in the living room where I'd placed it earlier under the pretense of testing for Emma. I switched on the receiver volume low and waited in the shadows, breath shallow. Minutes stretched. Then his footsteps crossed the living room floor, the familiar creak of the third board giving him away. The monitor crackled to life. Hey, it's me, Mark said, voice low and intimate in a way that twisted something deep inside me. She stormed out, finally gave me some breathing room. Yeah, Rachel, I can't keep doing this dance. Sarah's been checked out for years. Always the mom, the schedule keeper, never really seeing me anymore. I pressed a hand to my mouth, the receiver cool and unyielding in my grip. His words flowed easily, practiced almost. The scent of rain still clung to the air, drifting through the cracked window, but all I could focus on was the tenderness in his tone. Last night with you. It reminded me what it feels like to be wanted. Not needed for carpool or mortgage payments. We could make this real. Emma's old enough to understand eventually. She's practically grown. Rachel's voice came through faintly on speaker, warm and assured. I've waited for this, Mark. You make me feel alive again, too. No more hiding. Their conversation continued in soft murmurs as plans for stolen afternoons, memories of college nights laced with laughter and regret. Each word landed like a blow, precise and unrelenting. I sat frozen on the edge of the guest bed, the mattress dipping slightly under my weight, tears tracing hot paths down my cheeks. The man who once stayed up all night when Emma had crew, held me through my mother's funeral, was casually dismantling our life with someone from his past. The call ended with soft goodbyes and a promise to meet soon. Mark's footsteps retreated toward the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open the clink of a beer bottle, then the television flicking on some sports highlight reel with its distant roar of crowds. Ordinary sounds in an unraveling world. I stayed hidden longer than necessary, letting the monitor's static fill the silence. My hands trembled as I finally stood, legs unsteady on the carpet. The house smelled of our unfinished dinner cooling on the table. I wiped my face, composed myself with deep breaths that tasted of salt and resolve, then walked downstairs. Mark was on the couch, bottle in hand, staring at the screen without really watching. He startled when I entered. "Sarah, I thought you left. I heard everything." My voice was calm, steadier than I felt. The words hung in the air between us, heavy as the rain-soaked leaves outside. He set the bottle down slowly, face draining of color. "What are you talking about?" "The baby monitor. Your call with Rachel. All of it." I crossed my arms, nails digging into my sleeves. The living room lamp cast long shadows across the floor, highlighting the distance that had grown between us for months. Mark stood running a hand through his hair. "It's not, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It started at the reunion. She understood the pressure I'm under. You've been so focused on Emma and everything else. I felt invisible too." The excuse landed flat, echoing off the walls, lined with family photos, smiling faces from vacations and birthdays that now felt like artifacts. I stepped closer, the scent of his cologne mixing with the faint beer on his breath. Invisible. "I carried this family while you chased promotions. I was here, Mark, every night, every appointment, every quiet moment, wondering where we went wrong." He reached for me, but I stepped back. The rejection seemed to deflate him. "I love you, Sarah. This was a mistake. A midlife stupid mistake. Love doesn't look like planning to leave with someone else while I'm still in the house." My throat tightened, but I held his gaze. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, marking seconds of a marriage fracturing in real time. We stood there in the living room that suddenly felt too small, saw the baby monitor still glowing softly on the side table like a silent judge. Outside, a car passed headlights sweeping across the curtains. Inside, everything had changed. The confrontation hung in the air like smoke after a fire, thick and acrid. Mark stood frozen in the living room, the television's glow flickering across his face, casting harsh shadows under his eyes. The beer bottle sat forgotten on the coffee table, condensation pooling on the wood. "Sarah, please let me explain." "Explain," I repeated, voice low but steady, the word cutting through the quiet house. My hands clenched at my sides, nails pressing into palms. The baby monitor's green light blinked innocently on the table, a small device that had shattered everything. "I heard you planning your exit with her." While I was still here cooking dinner and worrying about our daughter, he sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. The familiar scent of his aftershave mixed with the lingering aroma of our unfinished meal. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Rachel and I, we had history. The reunion brought it back. "You've been so wrapped up in being the perfect mom, the perfect everything." I felt like a paycheck, not a husband. His words landed heavily, each one chipping away at the life I thought we shared. I paced to the window, staring out at the dark street where porch lights glowed steadily. Rain from earlier dripped from the eaves in slow, rhythmic taps, and I felt like a ghost in my own home. Supporting your career, managing this house, holding Emma together when she struggles, but I didn't go looking for someone else to make me feel seen. Mark looked up, eyes red. I love you. I do. This was a stupid escape. The pressure at work, turning 45, wondering if this is all there is. Rachel listened without the baggage. Baggage. I turned sharply, the word bitter on my tongue. The floorboards creaked under my steps as I crossed back to him. That baggage is our life, our daughter, the years we built together. My voice cracked despite my efforts, but I pushed on. She may understand your ambitions, but she doesn't know the man who stayed up nights with a sick child or held me through grief. Or maybe she does now, and that's worse. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away the rejection, swift and final. The touch I once craved now felt foreign. Silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of a neighbor's car. Emma's absence was a mercy. Her room upstairs sat quiet posters and books, a reminder of the family we were supposed to protect. The argument escalated in waves. Accusations flew my emotional distance, his secrecy. Voices rose, then fell raw and exhausted. At one point, Mark stood pacing the same path I had, running fingers through his hair until it stood wild. I'll end it tonight. We can go to counseling for Emma. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls lined with framed memories. Counseling. After you plan to leave me for her, the damage is done, Mark. I need time, space, and you need to decide what you actually want. He left that night for a hotel, the front door closing with a soft finality that reverberated through my chest. I stood in the empty living room, the baby monitor still on its silence, now deafening. The house smelled of cooling food and fading cologne. I cleared the table mechanically, plates clattering in the sink, hot water steaming up as I scrubbed harder than necessary. Sleep came in fragments on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that carried Mark's scent. Dreams tangled with memories. Our wedding day under blooming trees. Emma's first steps in this very room. Lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers. Morning light filtered through the curtains, gray and unforgiving. I called Lisa first, voice steady, despite the exhaustion. She listened without judgment, her calm words, a lifeline over the phone. Telling Emma later that afternoon was harder. She sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless meals, her face paling as I explained the basics. Dad made a mistake. We're figuring things out. Her eyes filled with tears, but she hugged me tightly, her strawberry shampoo familiar and grounding. I knew something was wrong. I love you both, but don't make me choose. The following days blurred into logistics, lawyer schedules, dividing responsibilities. Mark returned for clothes and tense conversations at the doorway, his suitcase heavy in his hand. Rachel, I learned through a mutual friend, pulled back once reality intruded. The fantasy crumbled under the weight of real consequences. I moved through the house like a stranger at first, opening windows to let in fresh air that smelled of autumn leaves and possibility. The pain was sharp, a constant ache in my chest, but beneath it stirred something new resolve. I scheduled my first therapy session, the receptionist's voice kind over the line. Emma and I cooked together one evening, the kitchen filled with laughter and the sizzle of stir-fry, a small step toward healing. Mark's regret arrived in waves, texts, flowers left on the porch, quiet apologies during handoffs. But trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. I watched him drive away one afternoon, tail lights fading down the street, and felt the weight lift slightly. The storm had passed, leaving damage, but also clear skies ahead. The weeks that followed carried a strange rhythm of grief and quiet rebuilding. Mornings started with coffee on the back porch, steam rising into the crisp autumn air as leaves drifted across the yard in gentle spirals. I sipped slowly, the mug warm against my palms, watching the neighborhood wake-up cars backing out of driveways, dogs barking in the distance. The house felt larger without Mark's constant presence. But the emptiness gradually made space for something softer possibility. Emma and I navigated the new normal together. She joined me in the kitchen after school, chopping vegetables with focused precision while music played softly from her phone. The sizzle of garlic and olive oil filled the room, grounding us both. "I'm angry at him," she admitted one evening knife, pausing mid-slice, "but I miss the way things were." I pulled her into a hug, her head resting on my shoulder, the familiar scent of her shampoo, a quiet comfort. "We're figuring it out one day at a time. That's enough for now?" Therapy became my steady anchor. The counselor's office smelled of chamomile tea and worn books, her voice calm as she helped me unpack years of unspoken needs. I learned to voice them, not just to others, but to myself. I returned to teaching full-time, the chatter of students and the scratch of chalk on boards, bringing a sense of purpose I'd set aside. Evenings brought long walks through the park boots, crunching over fallen leaves, the cool air sharp in my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt the contours of my own life sharpening into focus. Mark tried reconciliation at first. He'd show up for Emma's events, flowers in hand for me, his eyes carrying the heavy weight of regret. During one handoff at the house, the porch light casting long shadows, he lingered. "I was lost, Sarah. The midlife fog made everything seem unbearable. I see now what I risked losing." His voice was rough, sincere in the moment, but I kept the door between us. Some doors once slammed stay closed for good reason. Rachel faded from the picture as reality set in. The fantasy couldn't withstand custody schedules, therapy sessions, and the daily grind of real life. I heard through mutual connections that she'd moved on, seeking her own fresh start. Part of me felt relief. Another part recognized the universal ache of unmet expectations. One clear weekend afternoon, Emma and I returned to the park where our family once walked together. Sunlight filtered through bare branches, warming my face as I sat on a bench. Emma swung higher on the old playground, set her laughter carrying across the field. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Mark on a distant bench, watching us quietly. Our eyes met briefly. He offered a small, sad nod before turning away, shoulders slumped. I didn't wave. Some chapters end not with fireworks, but with quiet acceptance. Seasons shifted. Winter brought soft snow blanketing the yard holidays, navigated with careful co-parenting and new traditions, Emma and I baking cookies that filled the kitchen with cinnamon and warmth. Spring arrived with blooming daffodils pushing through the soil, mirroring my own tentative growth. I went on a few cautious dates, nothing serious yet, but each conversation reminded me I was more than a wife or mother. I was Sarah, with dreams that had waited patiently. Looking back, the baby monitor moment didn't just expose betrayal. It forced me to confront the quiet ways I dimmed my own light. Marriage requires two people tending the fire. When one stops, the embers cool. I don't regret the years we shared. They shaped me. But I'm grateful for the strength that came after. If you're listening to this and sitting in a marriage that feels distant or heavy, know you're not alone. Talk openly before the cracks become chasms. Seek help. Honor your worth. And remember that sometimes the hardest doors we close lead to the clearest paths forward. I want to know how this story lands with you. Have you faced a similar turning point? Share in the comments below and tell me where you're listening from. We have so many more honest stories to explore together.